Does everything at your church seem to be just going exactly right? You're starting to see numerical growth, you're seeing spiritual growth, you have new people coming in, you have new volunteers. You just feel like, man, it doesn't get any better than this in ministry. If you feel that way, if that's where you are, is a good chance that you're enjoying the prime stage of your church's life cycle. Everything is going well, you're growing, people are engaging with one another, people are growing spiritually, they're getting into discipleship, they're getting into volunteering. People are loving coming to your church. New people from the community are coming in, and they're jumping in and they're being a part, and you just feel like, man, we have hit our stride and things are going well. Well, that's a great time to be in. It's an exciting time. It's a fun time. But there are things to be cautious of as you're in this prime stage so that you don't slip into the next stage of the life cycle. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about what the prime stage looks like, how to maximize it, and then also how to make sure that you don't start slipping into the next stage of the life cycle, which is the downside of the life cycle. So let's get started. So the big question is this: how do pastors like us who remain focused on the mission of Jesus and serving our communities without being distracted by everything in the world around us, how do we increase our effectiveness while living a lifestyle that doesn't compromise our health, our families, or our personal relationships with Jesus? That's the question this podcast is going to answer. I'm Dr. Brandon Party Cooper, and welcome to the Ministry Hackers Podcast. Welcome to this episode of the Ministry Hackers Podcast. So glad that you're here. So glad that you're joining me today. I'm going to have to admit, I'm dealing with a little bit of sickness, so if I sound a little nasally to you, I do apologize. I have small children, they're in school, and they're sick all the time. So, so for me, it's always a matter of just trying to keep it under wraps on my end. But I hope you are doing well. I hope you have enjoyed the fall. We are in November now. October has passed. Halloween has passed. We have piles of candy in our homes now. I hope that you have enjoyed it so far. We're into November, which means for those of us who are diehards, this is the beginning of the Christmas season. Now, I've started listening to Christmas music several weeks ago. Little bits here and there, just kind of bringing it in piece by piece. But here we are in November. It's time to enjoy Christmas music. It's time to get into the holiday season, into Thanksgiving, and excited about this time of year. Now, if you are new here to the Ministry Hackers Podcast, what we do here is we help pastors like you. We help you to grow a thriving ministry, a lively, healthy ministry, while at the same time helping you live that life that is fulfilling, that you're able to spend time with your family, your friends, your hobbies, do the things that you love to do outside of ministry. Because you and I both know, as great as ministry is, as much as we love it, as much as we love pastoring people, there's a part of us that loves to do other things other than ministry. And that's what we want to help you do. We want to cut down that overwhelm, cut down the anxiety, lower stress levels, and help you enjoy every aspect of life, including ministry. And that's what our goal here is here at Ministry Hackers. And I'm so glad that you're a part here and that you're joining us. For those of you who are here with us all the time, you know this, you know that's what we do. And I hope that you're starting to see steps forward, start living that dream life in ministry. And so glad that you're here today. What we are going to talk about today is we're going to continue the conversation about the life cycle of a church, what that looks like, how we should navigate each step. And today we're going to talk about the prime stage. But before I do that, I want to invite you to take advantage of this free step-by-step guide to get started living your dream life. The step-by-step guide is a guide that's going to show you how you can go from being stressed and overwhelmed today to start living that dream life in ministry where you get to spend time with your family and friends. You get to enjoy a growing ministry. I know that's what every one of us wants to do. If you're a pastor and ministry leader, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for a lifestyle where you get to fulfill the calling that God has put on your life, but not feel so stressed and overwhelmed and just struggling to make it through your weeks. That's not what ministry should be. And that's what I want to take and change for you. And so this step-by-step guide is going to show you step-by-step how to do that. And so if you go to brandonpartycooper.com/more time, more money, you'll see the step-by-step guide. You'll see how you can just go moving straight through each stage, changing the way you do ministry, changing the way you approach life, changing the way you approach your family relationships and your home relationships. The idea here is to create margin in your time, margin in your money, and create engaging experiences that people love to be a part of, love coming to, where your church just grows automatically. And you are simply following the calling of God, leading people, and doing the things that only you can do. So again, go to brandonpartycooper.com/more time, more money. Get your step-by-step guide today and get started working towards that dream life in ministry. Okay, so again, what we want to talk about today is we want to talk about the life. Can you continue our conversation about the life cycle of a church? Now, in a previous episode, we talked about the first 4 stages of the life cycle. We talked about the birth stage, where that's really your planting stage. We talked about the infancy stage. This is where we're just trying to survive. We have this new church. It's trying to get its, get the doors open and trying to keep going through that first year. That's the surviving stage. We're just doing what we have to keep the church alive. Those during this second stage. Then after the infancy stage, after the infancy stage, we're into the childhood stage, and that's getting our feet. That's where we're really just kind of figuring some things out. Some things are starting to work. We're starting to put some things into place. Following that's the adolescent stage, and this is where we start to find ourselves. This is where we really start to discover who we are as a church. We've gone through some difficulties. We've planted. We've gone through some growing pains. We've navigated through some challenges. We've seen some great victories. Everybody's excited. Everybody's engaged. And this is the point where we start to, in adolescence, this is where we start saying, okay, this is who we are. We've tested it from the planting stage all the way through. We've kind of, we started with an idea. We've kind of tweaked it along the way. But now at the adolescent stage, this is where we're starting to say, we are this. This is who we are in our community. This is the mission that God's called us to. This is the goal, the mission, the plan. This is where we're going. You've seen some people come off. A lot of your planting team has moved on. You have other people who are coming in who are fitting into your core and really creating that core group that's going to move you into the next stage. And that's the stage we're going to talk about today. That stage is the prime stage. So the prime stage in your church's life cycle is really, if you think about a bell curve, the prime is really the top of the curve. You've gone through all of the struggles of early stages. You've figured out who you are in the adolescent stage, and now you've reached the point at the top of that bell curve where everything is just working. It just feels like, man, everything that we do is just, man, it's so effective. People are coming into our churches. People are walking through the doors. They're sitting in our sanctuary. They're engaging in our small groups and discipleship. They're engaging in events and they're talking about it all over town, and everybody's excited. And there's just this sense of like, man, God is moving in such a huge way. People are loving everything that we do. For you as a pastor, this is the best stage probably for you, because everybody thinks that everything you're doing is great. Now you have you always have a handful of people that find something to complain about. But for the most part, this is the stage where everybody just loves everything you're doing. And you can't really do anything wrong, because everything that's happening is just, it's beyond what you're doing. It's beyond what any volunteers are doing. It's beyond your staff. God is really just at this stage making things happen, and lives are being changed, and everything just seems to be clicking, and it's very smooth. It's very efficient. It almost doesn't even feel like you're working anymore, because it's so much fun and there's so much energy. Now, the great part is that the prime stage is where you can make the most forward progress. This is where opportunities just start coming to you. You're not looking for opportunities. They're coming to you as fast as you can make decisions about it. And this is where the stage where you have to say no to a lot of things. You have to start saying no to opportunities because you just don't have enough time, or they don't fit into your mission, or they don't fit into where your church is going. And the reality is wherever God is moving and wherever there is success. So even if you just move outside of the church world and you move into a secular mindset, wherever there is success, people gravitate. And so now when you step into a church setting where by all intents and purposes you could say we are a successful church, and then you add in the fact that God is moving in great ways. Lives are being changed. People are being healed. Salvations are happening. Baptisms are happening. Things like that are happening, and God is clearly moving. People are just flocking to your services. They're flocking to work with you, to be a part of what's going on. This is where opportunities come by the truckloads. And you, as a pastor, are trying to navigate which opportunities do we take and which ones do we avoid. Which ones do we just have to say no to because we don't have enough space, time, energy, resources, whatever, even though they're great opportunities. This is a great position to be in. It's a great time. But again, you have to say no, and that's hard. And this is a fun time to start to then think forward. Okay, how are we going to navigate in the future? How are we going to keep this going? Because when you're in the prime stage, you don't want it to end. And the prime stage can last a long time, particularly if you have built a strong foundation and you have a strong team and you don't have a lot of transitional turnover on your staff and in your volunteers. If you have consistent people who are on board and doing their best and working hard and really committed to the mission that the church is committed to, if that's the case, then the prime stage can last for years, even decades sometimes, depending on how you lead through it. But at the same time, there is this looming reality. The reality of any life cycle is that the life cycle continues. It does keep going. It does keep moving forward. And so just as though even though you're in this prime stage and you're loving it and you're enjoying it, there is this sense of there's a point where this is going to end. Now, it could be next year. It could be 10 years from now. It could be 20 years from now. At some point, it will end. And the idea here is that we want to try and do everything we can to keep the prime stage going as long as possible. Because this is a stage where everything is just working and we want it to keep working. And so the focus here, the focus in the prime stage, this is the thriving stage. Our focus, what we want to really turn our attention to and focus on, is how do we maximize the opportunities that are coming our way? How do we maximize this moment that we're in, this season, this phase that we're in? How do we maximize that? Now, this is where it comes in. So this is where it's so important that you as a pastor are understanding that you are doing the things that only you can do. Because if you somehow come through the adolescent stage and you enter into a prime stage and you're still doing things that you should have handed off, that other people should be doing, if that's where you are, then there's a reality that you could cut the prime stage short simply because you're not focused on the things that only you can focus on. This is why we talk about, at Ministry Hackers, we talk a lot about you doing the things that only you can do, building the team, putting those pieces together, hiring the right staff members, getting the right volunteers, but building the team where you can hand everything off to them that somebody else can do. And you're doing the things that only you can do. Because when you enter into a prime stage, first of all, I think it's really hard to enter into a prime stage if you're not doing that. Now, if you're a small church in a small town, I think that you can enter into a prime stage where you're doing everything for the most part on your own. That is possible, but it's going to be short-lived, and the effects of it are not going to last as long. If you're in a situation where, even if you're in a small church in a larger town or a larger city, you need to build a team around you that you can hand things off to. Because when you enter in prime stage, this is where you, as a pastor, where your leadership becomes the most valuable. Maybe even more so than the planting stage. I think the planting stage is it's critical that you as a pastor are leading well. However, I also think that the planting stage has lots of emotion. It has lots of excitement. It has lots of other factors that are pushing it forward. So even if, I also think this is partially why you lose people after the planting stage, because there are people who were on your team or who are on your team in the planting stage who are there because you're planting. It has for them, it has nothing to do with your leadership. It has everything to do with your planting. It's exciting. They want to be a part of that. But when you enter into the prime stage, you've already gone through some difficulties. You already navigated some challenges. And your leadership has become more and more important every step of the way. But by entering into the prime stage, everything is going great. And you have lots of opportunities coming your way. And it's almost like you're, again, if you're looking at the bell curve of a life cycle, you're at the top, you're at the peak of the mountain. And this is the point where everybody's like, man, we've arrived. This is great. This is everything that we thought it should be. God is moving. Everything is the best it possibly can be. And if you as a pastor allow your church to slip into this idea that we have arrived, then that prime stage is going to be very short-lived. And you're quickly going to move into the next stage. And that stage is maturity, which is settling in, which we don't want to do. And so I think that this prime stage, this thriving stage where you're maximizing opportunities, your leadership is paramount. Because you have to be the one to say, you know what? We're not going to do that. We are going to do that. We are going to put that off. We are going to prepare for this, even though it may not make sense. This is where looking forward, this is where your foresight work comes in. This is where your preparation, this is where, again, you can argue this is where you need to be plugged into God more than ever. And unfortunately, this is the point where a lot of pastors kind of unplug from God. This is where we are tempted with this idea that I got us here. As a pastor, I led us here. My great leadership or my great preaching or my great foresight or whatever somehow got us here. And we never say that. That's not something we never verbalize. But it is something that we struggle with internally, especially those of us who are ambitious, those of us who are maybe a little vain at times, which is okay. Like, that's just a part of being human. None of us are perfect, but some of us struggle with different things. And for some of us, struggling with this idea that my leadership has gotten us here, that's a very real temptation. And this is why I think that at the prime stage, we need to be plugged into God even more than we ever have before. We need to work on our humility more than we ever have had before. Because everybody's going to be saying how great you are and what a great job you've done. And you have, because you've led to this point. But this is where your leadership needs to kick into high gear and say, yeah, I've done a good job. I've done a good job being obedient. I've done a good job of stewarding. But God's the one that's bringing the increase. God is the one that's opening those doors. God is the one that's bringing the people through the doors. God is the one. And keeping your congregation, your staff, keeping even your community focused on the fact that God is the reason why, rather than the church is the reason why, or you're the reason why, that becomes huge. And if your leadership is not prepared and ready to navigate through that prime stage, then you're going to move through it pretty quickly, and you're going to start the decline into the maturity stage faster than you are really prepared for. Which, that's not intended to be a downer at all. That's not intended to be, everything is bleak. That's not. Because again, the prime stage is great. It's exciting, and it's so much fun, and you're maximizing opportunities. You're taking your resources, you're stretching them farther than you ever have before. You're building up your people, you're training them, developing them. You're sending out missionaries from your congregation, or you're sending out people with a calling on life, sending them out to plant churches or be a part of a staff on another church somewhere else. You're becoming this resource that's really backing the kingdom of God and what God is doing, and helping support other churches and pastors and everything else. And that's all great. And so this isn't meant to be a downer, but it is meant to be maybe a cautionary tale of there is a next stage after this. And entering into that stage is the beginning of the end. And so we want to maximize the opportunities in this stage. We want to stretch the prime stage as long as we can, so that when we get to the point where we are slipping into the maturity stage, we know we've maximized it. We know we've done everything we could. We know that we have gone as far as we can. And we have really changed the lives of our community. We've made an impact in a way that is undeniable. And so at this stage, this is where your leadership is vital. And this is why I think if you are not in this stage, if you're not in the prime stage yet, it's easy to get caught up in all the tasks and all the things that need to be done, all the events, and it's easy to get caught up in all that. But more importantly is you need to develop your leadership in preparation for that prime stage, for the season that's coming. Okay, so what are the questions that you need to ask to identify whether or not you are in the prime stage? The first question is does everything seem to be working right? It's almost like you have the Midas touch. Every ministry that you start, every event you have, it just seems to go well. People are coming, people are engaging. You don't really feel like you're not having anything that's flopping. Everything you're doing just feels like it's going well. And even if there are things that are flopping, it doesn't feel that way. It feels like you have 100 wins and then you have one loss, and it's like, oh yeah, I guess that event didn't go well. But overall, everything is going well. You feel like, man, everything is moving forward. Excitement is building. All of that. If that's where you are, there's a good chance you're in the prime stage. The second question is there spiritual and numerical growth just happening? Now, you may be seeing spiritual and numerical growth already and not be in prime stage. But it's because you can see the efforts you're doing leading to growth. But when you're in the prime stage, it's you kind of get to this point. Malcolm Gladwell talks about the flywheel effect. You reach this point where you're just kind of looking around and saying, I don't really know where everybody's coming from. I don't really know how they're finding us or how they're getting here. It just seems like people are showing up. Or you're seeing spiritual growth and you've been running your discipleship process for years. And for some reason, it just seems like, man, it's way more effective than it has been in the past. And people are just growing spiritually in ways that you can't anticipate because you haven't built a system for that, a discipleship process for that. It's just happening. People are going deeper with their relationship with Jesus. People are coming through the doors unexpectedly. Growth is just happening, and you're not really sure why or how. You're okay with it. You're riding it, but you just can't put your finger on it. You just know it's happening. If that's the case, then it's a good chance you're in the prime stage because you've hit that flywheel effect where things are running themselves and you're just along for the ride. So it's a good chance you're in the prime stage if that's happening. And then the third question you can ask is morale high among your teams and volunteers, and are they plentiful? Now, I'm not saying that you're going to have more volunteers than you have need because I just think that that's such a unicorn in the church world. Like, most of us just don't have that, where we have so many volunteers, we just don't even know where to place them all. But if you're at a stage where everybody's morale is high, your volunteers are high, your pastoral staff is high, your administrative staff is high, everybody is just excited and high on morale and high on their, on how they feel about the church and they feel about what God's doing. Like that, just everybody's just on cloud nine together. If that's the case, then there's a good chance you're in the prime stage. At the same time, you have plenty of volunteers. And when I say plenty, I'm saying, it's not hard for you to fill your spots. It's not hard for you to get somebody. If somebody drops out, there's 2 or 3 people ready to jump right back in. The culture of your volunteer teams are like, hey, if you need me, I'm there for you. If that's the case, then there's a good chance you're in the prime stage. And so if you're answering those questions and you're coming up with, yes, everything does seem to be working right. And yes, we are seeing growth, and I can't even put my finger on where it's coming from. And yes, everybody's morale is high and we just have enough volunteers. Maybe we have more than we need, but probably we just have enough. We just have what we need. If that's the case, there's a good chance you're in prime, which means that this is the time to maximize the opportunities, to have lots of fun, to build deep relationships, to create memories, and to remember that you want to stretch this prime stage out as long as you possibly can. Because on the horizon, someday, somewhere along the way, you're going to enter into the maturity stage, and it's going to feel kind of like the prime stage, mostly like the prime stage, but you're going to be slipping away from that high octane, high excitement, high results reality that you're in the prime. The maturity looks like prime, but it's not. And it's the beginning of the end. And it's where churches and pastors and congregations and members, this is where we start to slip into holding on to the past and resisting the future. And that's a stage that we don't want to be in. And we're going to talk about that in the next episode. All right. So I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next episode.